Think of the people you interact with every day. Would you want to spend a day in a canoe with them? I'm Nathan Mercereau, and as a financial advisor with over 25 years of experience, I've learned that the quality of the people you spend time with is a lot more valuable than what can show up in a set of financial projections. And growing up in Canada, I discovered you can learn a lot about a person when you spend a day in a canoe with them. So I created this show where I interview people I find interesting and inspiring. I invite you to listen in and learn from their stories so you can create the life you want, one filled with wealth, wisdom, meaning, and purpose. Well, I'm pleased today to spend time with Lisa Crafford, who's a director and head of business consulting at Bank of New York Mellon in the Pershing Group. And Lisa and I have met a number of years ago through industry conferences focusing on helping firms in our wealth management space get more efficient with operations. Lisa earned her MBA from the College of William and Mary and Bachelor of Business from Sydney. And she was also named as a top 40 under 40 by Investment News in 2019. So Lisa, welcome to Day in a Canoe. Really happy that we're connected again. The last couple of years of COVID has kept us apart from connecting at conferences. And recently we met up and it was great to see you and your team. So welcome. And one of the things that's always impressed me about you is your focus on mentorship. What are some of the things that you have learned and are seeing implemented in firms around mentorship?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really a big part of my story because I needed it. And so I created it because it was one of those things that I always wished that had existed for me in a more structured way, where it wasn't so awkward for me to try and find those mentors and those kind of strategic relationships around the place. And so it's been really fun over the last 10, 15 years in the RIA space to see how the mentoring philosophy and relationships have really grown over the years. So, when I started, I didn't know anybody in the industry. I didn't even know what an RIA was. And it was just an admin job. And, I did a lot of scanning and filing. And then as I kind of got deeper and deeper into it, I realized oh, hey, this is a real thing. And I like this business. And so I started looking for people that would mentor me. And I remember I was at Bob Veris's conference, which is where we met back in, it would have been 2009. And a woman was on stage and she was speaking. And I don't even remember what she was talking about, but I just loved how she talked, right? About her people and the business and her own story. And I walked up to her afterwards and I was super intimidated because she's just like this beautiful and strong and intelligent female leader in our space. And I said, hey, Erica, it was, great presentation. I don't know anyone. I don't know anything. Can you maybe teach me? And she was so generous with me, and we're still friends to this day. And we catch up when we can. And I haven't seen her in a while either because of COVID. But it got me realizing that, this is such a great industry where people love to share, and we just need to create avenues and opportunities for people to share. And so when I came to Pershing, there was a little bit of that going on. You get kind of a senior buddy assigned to you, and there's some other kind of mentoring programs. And then Mark Tiberghien and a couple of others started this reverse mentoring program where the younger next-gen employees were paired up with senior executives, managing directors and heads of business across BNY Mellon, which is a 50,000 person organization around the world, right? So we're getting access to some really, really senior people. And all of a sudden, we were mentoring them. And it really flipped the switch. And I thought, wow, this is so cool too. And so, as I've gone about my career and as I've met other people, one of the first things I talk to them about is well, who's mentoring you? And what does that look like? And is it working? And if it's working, why is it working? And, I gather a lot of stories from people about their mentoring and what's worked for them. And I use that to help other people also do the same thing.
I love that. And I love the initiative that you took back in the day at that conference. I think it really is inspiring when you see how that one conversation created such a ripple effect into your career. Yeah. So when people are at a point when they think they need to know and learn their job, What's the
Mhm.
difference between that and mentorship, or is it one and the same?
I think mentorship is different. It's not about learning the technical elements of your job, right? Uh, that's the organization's responsibility. Mentorship is the individual's responsibility, right? If you're in a mentoring relationship as a mentor or mentee and you show up to a meeting without an agenda, then you're wasting your time and that other person's time, regardless of what side of the table you're on. And it's not so much questions about, well, how do I perform this function, right? And in our world, it's like, how do I open an account? How do I move money? It's more about, help me understand why we do things this way, or help me understand, what you've learned from years of doing these things, right? It's more around, the why, and rather than the what exactly.
No, that's a great perspective. And then what do you mean by reverse mentorship? Because that's a newer
Yeah.
concept. And
Yeah.
Mark Diversion, and a pioneer and industry leader in our space, he's been on Dana Canoe podcast sharing his wisdom. And
Yeah.
it's so great to connect with you as someone that he's had an influence on. So can you just frame
Oh,
reverse
huge
mentorship
influence.
and how that, I guess, operates?
Yeah, Mark's had a huge impact on my career. There's several people right around the place, Bob and Jean or others, where it's a mutually beneficial thing. But I feel like I'm on the winning side of that relationship. But so reverse mentoring is really more about allowing both sides to mentor, right? But it puts the onus on the younger, less experienced person to come into the relationship as the teacher, right? And look, it's not about teaching old people how to use technology, right? Like we are beyond that, right? It's really about, how are younger people feeling about working for this organization, right? If you're a senior executive and you're a 2 month in, 2 year in new hire, you have very different experiences of your organization. And so reverse mentoring creates that opportunity for younger folks to share feedback, to voice their feelings and opinions in a way that's not going to have negative impacts on their job, but it's a way to get that message to the top of the house. And look, the top of the house wants to hear it, right? Like, well, they should. At Pershing, they certainly do, right? And they want to engage that way. And as that younger person is doing that, and I learned so much from this program. One of my mentors was actually our head of human resources, and we were in a mentoring relationship for about 18 months. Learned so much from her. A lot of it was about how to give feedback, right? Because, young people might come into an organization and someone says, well, what do you think? And they think it's free reign to say everything. And it's actually, you got to put some filters on things and think about how you're representing yourself and your organization. And so whilst, the onus is on the younger person to do the teaching, everybody's really benefiting from that.
No, that's excellent. And the importance of safety being intact is critical so
Oh,
that the
yeah.
younger person can feel like there's no negative ramifications to what their insight is.
Yeah.
So
And
you've had, I'm sorry,
there's a
go
way
ahead.
to set that up too, right? So you never reverse mentor someone that you report to, right? Like, you get as far away from your business unit you're operating, right? There's a reason why Mark was never my formal reverse mentor, because I reported into him eventually, right? We had a separate relationship going on there, but mine went into the HR department, which was totally, totally separate. I have folks now in the Pershing reverse mentoring program that are mentoring leaders in Brazil, right? Get as far away from the people that report to you. And what I've heard from smaller firms is like, well, that's nice. Like, you can do that. You have a lot of people at your organization. I have 20, right? Can't really do that. Whatever industry you're in, ours is so great for this, but like, call up one of your competitors or a company that's totally unrelated to you, where there's a leader that you admire, and say, hey, I'd love to be in this reverse mentoring relationship. There's nothing that says the reverse mentoring has to be done within one company or within one industry, which I love too, right? Like, we learn so much from looking outside of our little echo chamber.
Absolutely. And I was sharing just before we hit the record button today about a visit that my team members took to visit another firm in Kansas to just learn and listen and share best practices. And I think there's so many opportunities to connect with one another and have meaningful conversations where there's no agenda except discovery, learning, and support for one another. And I think that's what builds a great community. You are considered a leader in our industry. Now, how did your career evolve? Take us back to, Lisa's
Yeah.
beginning journey and how that materialized.
I still have that imposter syndrome where it's like, I'm a leader. Okay. Like, and, but then I remember my kids are watching and it's like, yeah, I'm a leader. So yeah, humble beginnings, grew up in Sydney, Australia, did my undergrad there, had the best job in college. I ran Blockbuster and, tell you what, hands down, probably one of the favorite jobs that I've ever had. I specifically ran one franchise location and worked with an incredible crew of people. I'm still in touch with a lot of the people that I managed in that job. We had no turnover. Nobody ever left because it was just such a fun place to work and like such a really great group of people.
What made it fun?
Well, we got robbed a bunch of times, right? And that kind of that kind of brought us together. When some guy's wearing a face covering and holding a big knife in your face, you kind of bond over that a little bit. But we were all college students. We were all young people. We were just trying to scrape by and pay for school and have fun in our early 20s. And you know Blockbuster's Friday, Saturday night, right? Like that's our peak hours. And we never had a problem filling a shift on a Friday or Saturday night. I think that there was just this inherent, genuine liking each other, right? That we wanted to come to work and like we enjoyed it. And we had competitions and, we'd have Christmas parties. And, I remember when I left, a bunch of our regulars bought me gifts. My parents were horrified that like people at Blockbuster were giving me going away presents. And it's like, yeah, you built this community, right? You spend so much time at work, like build this community around the people that you work with and the people that you serve. And people will want to come in and people will want to work. And we had a long list of people that wanted to work for us, but I couldn't hire a lot of them because nobody ever left. So those were good days. So moved to Virginia in 2007. Really great time to start your career. 2007, 2008. It's just a wonderful, wonderful time to get going in a country where you don't really quite have full work authority and you didn't know anybody. And ended up at Robert Half International doing recruiting. I had an accent back then, so, got a lot of callbacks, but not a lot of sales. It was a tough time to be in recruiting. Nobody was hiring and candidates wanted to work. And, I was putting folks to work that had 10, 15 years of experience and they were getting paid $10 an hour to answer phones. And so, I was kind of starting out going, I don't want to do this. This is not joy for me. Right. So, when I left there, I kind of made a list of some of my favorite clients that I had helped recruit for. And I ended up getting a job with one of them, which was an RIA in the DC metro area. And I stayed there for several years, came in for one job and left with a very, very different job. And it was a great experience to really get my hands dirty on all aspects of an RIA, except for delivering advice to clients. It's not me. I loved the business of the business and I loved creating processes and reducing risk and finding ways to do better, do more, and enhance the employee experience and the client experience. And so a lot happened in the 5 years I was there. It was really fun. And then I was chatting with Mark at Bob Veris's conference, which is a recurring theme in my life. And Mark and I were chatting. I just finished my MBA and was kind of chatting about career progression and what I wanted to do. And he said, come work for me. And I said, okay. And then I said, well, what's the job? I didn't even care. It's like, talk about those strategic relationships, right? And, I learned really quickly that when Mark said, hey, we should do this, it was like, okay, sure. And ask questions later. So here I am. I'm at Pershing. I've been here 7 years, several different jobs, several different bosses, a few different locations, and really, really enjoying it and love the work that we get to do, working with clients and having a team here at Pershing.
I love your attitude around continuous learning, being open minded, building community, creating connections. And I think that mindset is really what is available to us all. We just have to
Hmm.
sometimes, flip the switch or, move away from whatever may be slowing us down or kind of consuming our focus to say, what are the possibilities? What if we do things differently? What if we try different angles on bringing people
Yeah.
together? And so, as you look back at your career, you're young, you're a leader, you're influential. What are some of the defining moments along the way? I think Blockbuster was one of them, and I loved how you
Yeah.
unpacked that story.
Yeah.
But maybe after Blockbuster or beyond, is there anything that stands out as you look back to say, "Wow, those really were defining moments"?
Certain people that I've met have been defining moments for me, and being really vulnerable with those people, and just kind of deciding whether it was after a period of time or in the moment, like I'm just going to bare my soul here and see see what happens. And more times than not, it's not always worked out great. Some people have been like, "Oh, geez, back off," but most of the time, it's worked out really well. And just going into relationships and experiences with this kind of outsider perspective, I've made some really big mistakes too, and those have been really defining. I remember discovering one day that I'd been misbilling a client for like 3 quarters, and I had to like give myself a pep talk in my office before I walked down to the CFO and say, "Oh, sorry guys, like cost us a few $1,000s because I've misbilled this client, underbilled this client," and just giving myself permission to be wrong, and not like I'm not good at going into things and not knowing what to do, right? I'm still trying to get better at that. And like my husband jokes that I won't play golf with him because I'm not perfect at golf, and it's incredibly true. I hate golf because I'm terrible at it. But there's an element of me where it's like I want to be really good all the time, but I've got to sometimes remember that I'm not. And so there's been some kind of major mistakes that I've made. I sent the wrong performance review to a client. I sent her sister's report to her and her report to her sister. Horrifying, as a 20 something year old, having to admit that to your boss and then call the client and make amends, right? I think the mistakes that I've made have been more defining than anything else along the way. And there's been many. So, and there will continue to be many. So,
Of course. And that's okay. I think that's the operating system that actually facilitates growth is when we have the willingness to admit when there's mistakes, uh, the humility to be introspective and accountable, and most importantly, authentic and walk with integrity. And no one's expecting
yeah.
perfection, although I think sometimes we place that on ourselves
Oh,
unrealistically. But if
absolutely.
we just relax on that and let things happen, but yet be fully engaged, fully present, and be supportive of the people that we're serving. I think that's the best that we can do, and great things happen out of that. So, as you
Yeah.
look back over the years, any advice that you would give yourself, a 20-year-old Lisa, maybe in the early
Yeah.
stages of life, looking
Yeah.
back?
So today, I mean, aside from this is like the highlight of my day, but today's been a really crappy day. Just there's some things going on in my life that just aren't great. And I think I was just really optimistic in my 20s that everything would just work out perfectly all the time, and it doesn't. And I'm really, really impacted by how people perceive me or what they say about me. And I put way, way, way too much weight on that. And so I think if I could go back and like give my 20-year-old self a pep talk, you know, I would, I would tell myself to be okay with not being perfect. And figure out a system to do that. And I've done a lot of exploring of my own story and my family of origin and all that good stuff. And that certainly helped over the years. But I wish I'd done that in my 20s, not my 30s. So, um, yeah, I mean, hindsight's everything, right? Like we feel like, we should have had this together. Like this shouldn't have been such a big deal. I got off a call earlier and I just got totally melted down. And I'm like, pull yourself together. Like you're not this like naive 20-year-old anymore, but sometimes things are still hard. And so I think I would go back and have that conversation with myself for sure.
That's great insight. I think being kind to ourselves every day is a good focus as well. And once again, it's about progress,
Yeah.
not perfection. Lisa, it's
Yeah.
been a pleasure to spend time with you today, and want to say thank you for being vulnerable, being just so reflective, and sharing your story so others listening to this podcast can learn. And you've been mentoring people today by example. So want to express gratitude, wish you all the best. Thank you for being a leader, and look forward to staying in touch.
Thanks, Nathan. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening and tuning in today in a Canoe. We're thrilled to have you as part of our community. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review and share it with your friends and loved ones. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel or follow us on social media platforms by searching Day in a Canoe. We'll see you next time.